The aroma of roasted chicken and thyme still hung warmly in the air of our small kitchen, a scent I'd always associated with love and safety. I smiled across the table at my husband of 12 years, Kalen Vance, as he refilled my wine glass. His smile, usually my anchor in any storm, seemed a little too bright tonight, a little too practiced. "The dinner was incredible, my love," Kalen said, his voice that familiar, soothing baritone that had whispered countless promises to me over the years. "You've outdone yourself." "Anything for our anniversary," I replied, though a tiny, cold knot in my stomach tightened. He had forgotten the actual date until I'd placed the card next to his coffee cup this morning. He took a long sip of wine and I saw it then, the flicker in his hazel eyes. The one that appeared just before he had to deliver bad news about a missed promotion or a forgotten bill. But this felt heavier. The comfortable silence between us suddenly felt fraught. "Ilara," he began, setting his glass down with a precise click. "There's something I need to talk to you about. Something amazing, actually." I folded my hands in my lap, my appetite vanishing. "Oh, you know the new regional branch in Zurich? The one they've been pouring resources into." He leaned forward, his enthusiasm feeling like a performance. "Well, they've offered me the lead project manager position. It's a 2-year contract. It's everything we've been working for." The knot in my stomach loosened slightly, replaced by a surge of pride. "Kalen, that's wonderful. That's a huge deal." My mind immediately began racing. Packing, finding a place to live, what to do with our little house here. I'd have to give notice at the library. The logistics were dizzying. "It is," he agreed, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "There's just one condition. It's a bit unusual." "A condition?" I asked, my excitement tempering. "What kind of condition?" He took a deep breath, looking down at his hands. "The company, they have this very strict, very old-fashioned policy for long-term overseas postings. They require the assignee to be unattached. Single." The words hung in the air between us, nonsensical. I actually let out a short, confused laugh. "What? That's absurd. That's got to be illegal. What about families?" I know, he said quickly, holding up his hands. "It's archaic. But it's in the contract. They think marital ties are a distraction, that the focus needs to be absolute. It's a huge investment for them. They want no complications." I stared at him, trying to process it. "So, what are you saying? You turn it down?" "No. God, no, Ilara. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The salary alone, we could finally be debt-free. We could put a real down payment on a house when we come back. We could." He reached across the table and took my hands. His were warm, but mine had gone ice cold. "I talked to my boss. There's a workaround." A deep, primal dread began to uncoil within me. "A workaround," I repeated, my voice flat. "It would just be on paper. A formality. We get a divorce." I snatched my hands back as if burned. "What? No. Absolutely not." "Hear me out," he pleaded, his eyes wide and earnest. Too earnest. "It's a fake divorce. Just for the paperwork. We go down to the courthouse, we file the papers, I go to Zurich, and the second the contract is up, we remarry. It's that simple. We'll know the truth. Nothing between us actually changes. Everything changes." I shot back, standing up so abruptly my chair scraped against the tiles. "You don't get a fake divorce. A divorce is a divorce. It's a legal severance. What about our health insurance? What about this house? What if something happens to you over there? I'd have no rights, Kalen. None." He was ready for this. He'd clearly rehearsed it. "I've thought of all that. We'll draw up a private agreement, a contract between us, witnessed by a lawyer. The house stays in both our names. I'll set up a separate bank account for you with a year's worth of expenses. I'll add you to my corporate insurance as a domestic partner. It's just a piece of paper for the HR department, my love. That's all it is." He came around the table and tried to pull me into an embrace. I stood rigid in his arms. It all sounded so logical, so planned. So cold. "I don't like it," I whispered into his shoulder, my voice thick with unshed tears. "It feels wrong. It feels like we're tempting fate." "We're not," he murmured into my hair, his voice the one he used to calm me during a thunderstorm. "We're outsmarting a stupid corporate policy. We're a team. We're stronger than a piece of paper. This is for our future, Ilara. For us." He kissed my forehead and I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in the man I'd built a life with for 12 years. The man who had held me through my miscarriage, who I had nursed through pneumonia. We were a team. But the dread wouldn't leave. It was a small, cold stone in my gut. What about your parents? I asked, a last-ditch effort to find reason. What do we tell them? My friends. We just announce we're divorcing. We tell them the truth, he said smoothly. We explain the situation. They'll understand it's for my career. And if they don't, it's only for 2 years. We can handle it. He looked at me, his expression so full of love and hope that the cold stone in my gut began to feel like a betrayal of my own. Was I being selfish? Was I holding him back from this incredible opportunity because of a superstitious fear? I thought of the financial strain we'd been under for years. I thought of the light in his eyes when he talked about his work. I thought of the future he was painting, debt-free, secure, a new house. I took a shaky breath. The word felt like ash in my mouth. Okay. His face lit up with pure relief. Okay. Okay, I repeated, forcing a smile. For us. For our future. He hugged me tightly, spinning me around slightly. You won't regret this, Alara. I promise you. This is the start of everything. As I clung to him, the cold stone in my gut remained. I had just agreed to dismantle the legal foundation of our life together based on a promise. And a tiny, terrified part of me, a part one silenced immediately, wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The courthouse smelled of lemon-scented disinfectant and anxiety. I sat on an unforgiving wooden bench, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, watching Kalen chat amiably with the clerk. He looked handsome in his crisp navy suit, the one he wore for important presentations. He looked like a man celebrating, not a man ending his marriage. He caught my eye and gave me a reassuring wink. I tried to smile back. My stomach was a writhing nest of snakes. It'll be over before you know it, he'd said this morning, kissing me goodbye as if he were just off to the office. Then we'll go for a nice lunch. Champagne. Now the clerk called our names. Kalen Vance and Alara Vance? We stood and walked to the counter together. My legs were weak. This was it. We were really doing it. We'd signed the private agreement with a lawyer the day before. It was tucked safely in my desk drawer at home, a flimsy shield against the formidable legal document we were about to enact. The clerk, a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, slid the papers toward us. You both have your IDs? And you're certain about this? No chance of reconciliation. We're certain, Kalen said, his voice firm and cheerful. He signed his name with a confident flourish. The clerk looked at me. Her eyes seemed to see right through my fragile composure. Ma'am. My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. I looked at Kalen. He nodded, his expression soft, encouraging. For us, he mouthed silently. I signed my name. Alara Vance. For the last time. The paperwork was processed with a terrifying efficiency. 20 minutes later, we were walking out into the blinding afternoon sun, holding a decree that declared us legally strangers. Kalen slipped his arm around my waist. See? Painless. Now how about that champagne? The lunch was a surreal pantomime of normality. He talked excitedly about Zurich, about the apartment the company was providing, about the travel we'd do when I visited. He promised to call every day. He promised it would fly by. He promised. His flight was a week later. I helped him pack, folding his sweaters, his suits, the silly novelty socks I'd bought him for Christmas. The reality of his absence began to truly sink in. 2 years felt like an eternity. The night before he left, he held me tightly in our bed. I love you, Alara. More than anything. This is just an intermission. I love you too, Kalen, I whispered, burying my face in his chest, breathing in his scent, trying to memorize it. Please be safe. Please call. I will. I promise. The next day I drove him to the airport. We said our goodbye at the security gate, a long, desperate kiss that left me breathless and tearful. I'll call you when I land, he said, cupping my face. I watched him walk through the security checkpoint, turn and give me one last wave. He was smiling. That was the last time I ever saw him. He did call when he landed. A short, crackly call. Made it safe. The apartment is great. I'll call you tomorrow, my love. I'm exhausted. That was the last time I heard his voice. The next day my calls went straight to voicemail. My texts remained unread. Panic, cold and sharp, began to set in. I called his company's Zurich office. "I'm sorry," a polite woman said. "There is no one by that name working here." The world tilted on its axis. "That's impossible. He just arrived. Kalen Vance. Lead project manager." "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no record of that position or that employee." I called his boss here at the local office. The number was disconnected. The cold stone of dread that had been in my gut for weeks exploded into a full-blown glacier, freezing me from the inside out. I was alone. And I was divorced. The weeks turned into months. I was paralyzed by grief and shock. The bank account he'd set up for me was empty, cleaned out the day after he left. The private agreement was worthless, a meaningless piece of paper. The mortgage on our house was in his name only, I discovered with fresh horror. He'd refinanced it months ago without my knowledge. I was served with eviction papers. I had nothing. I moved into a cramped, roach-infested studio apartment. The shame was overwhelming. How could I tell anyone? That I'd been fooled so completely? That I'd agreed to my own destruction? I told our friends and his parents that Kalen was working intensely and couldn't be reached. I think they knew I was lying. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. Then the final blow. Kalen's father, Arthur, a kind man who had always treated me like a daughter, had a massive heart attack. His mother, Beatrice, was shattered. We had no money for the best treatments. I did the only thing I could do. I got a job. Then another. Then a third. I worked as a waitress during the day, a cleaner in the evenings, and took data entry jobs online late into the night. I lived on coffee and desperation, funneling every spare cent to the hospital. Beatrice moved in with me, her mind crumbling under the stress and grief. I bathed her, I fed her, I held her while she cried for her son who never called, never wrote. Arthur passed away. The light in Beatrice's eyes went out completely. She followed him within 6 months. I arranged the funerals myself, burying them in paupers' graves, my heart breaking with every shovelful of dirt. I was utterly, completely alone. The years of relentless stress, poor nutrition and sleepless nights broke my health. By 38 I was diagnosed with ulcers, hypertension, and a debilitating autoimmune disease that left me in constant pain. I was a ghost in my own life, a shell of the woman I had been, haunted by the memory of a man and a smile that had been a lie. All I had left was the faint, bitter hope that Kalen Vance was dead somewhere. It was the only narrative that offered a shred of solace. Because the alternative, that he was alive and had done this to me deliberately, was a darkness too profound to bear. 10 years. A decade of waking up before dawn, of my body aching with a fatigue that sleep could not cure, of counting pennies for groceries. The glamorous, debt-free future Kalen had promised had manifested as a life of grinding poverty and silent despair. The library job was a distant memory. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of my studio and the 3 jobs that kept a roof, however precarious, over my head. The one thing I had managed to keep, through a complicated web of pleading with landlords and leveraging tiny bits of pity, was Kalen's parents' old row house. It was derelict, frozen in time, filled with the dusty ghosts of a family that had been erased. I couldn't bear to sell it. It was my last tangible connection to a life that had once been real. I used it as a storage unit, a physical manifestation of the attic of my own memories, boxed up, sealed shut and best left untouched. Then the letter came. Not to me. To the legal owner of 42 Willow Creek Lane. It was a formal notice of impending demolition. The entire street was being redeveloped. There would be compensation. Significant compensation. A bitter laugh escaped my chapped lips. Of course. The final cruel joke. Money right when it was too late to do me any good. Money for a house I didn't own that would legally belong to. I felt a jolt of ice in my veins. It would belong to Kalen. Or his next of kin. Which was, presumably, me. His divorced wife. I had no claim. I tossed the letter on the counter, a fresh wave of bitterness washing over me. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. A week later I was dragging my exhausted body up the stairs to my apartment when I saw a figure standing by my door. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered. For a heart-stopping, delirious second my mind, betrayed by exhaustion and old neural pathways, whispered Kalen. Then he turned. It was him. But it wasn't. The man I married had been vibrant, his face lined with smiles and ambition. This man was harder, coarser. He was tanned and well-dressed in a way that spoke of leisure, not work. His hair was shorter, streaked with gray at the temples. He looked like a successful middle-aged tourist. And he was not alone. Beside him, clinging to his arm, was a woman my age. She was slender, expensively dressed, her face carefully maintained by cosmetic help. She was laughing at something, her eyes sharp and calculating as they scanned the shabby hallway. The world narrowed to a pinprick. The air vanished from my lungs. I stopped, my keys clutched in my hand like a weapon. Kalen's eyes found me. There was no surprise, no shock, no guilt. There was only a cold, appraising glance, as if I were a piece of furniture he'd forgotten he owned. The woman's laughter died as she followed his gaze. A smirk played on her lips. "Alara," Kalen said. His voice was the same, but the warmth was gone, replaced by a flat, casual tone. "Long time." I couldn't speak. I could only stare, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. He gestured to the woman. "This is Serena." Serena gave a little finger wave, her eyes raking over my worn coat and cheap shoes with undisguised contempt. "We were in the neighborhood," Kalen continued as if this were a casual social call. "Thought we'd stop by. Heard about the demolition notice for the old place. Figured we'd handle the paperwork. Save you the trouble." The word echoed in the silent hallway. My voice, when it finally came, was a raspy stranger's. "Where have you been?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Around Europe mostly. The project got extended. Then other opportunities came up." He looked me up and down, and the smirk that had been on Serena's face now appeared on his. It was a cruel, ugly expression. "Looks like you've had a rough time of it. Good thing I married a gullible idiot like you back then. Otherwise, I never would have had all this time to really enjoy life." The words were a physical blow. They stole the last remaining breath from my body. It had all been a lie. Every single word. The job, the condition, the fake divorce. It was a meticulously planned escape. And I had signed my own prison sentence with a smile. Serena giggled, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, stop it, Kai. Don't be mean." She didn't mean it. Rage, hot and pure and terrifying, began to thaw the ice in my veins. "Your parents," I choked out. "They're dead. They got sick. They died waiting for you to call." For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, not grief. "Yeah. I heard. Shame. They were getting on anyway." The rage ignited into an inferno. I took a step forward, my keys pointed at him like a blade. "Get out." Kalen's face hardened. "We're not done. The house. The compensation. I need you to sign whatever papers they send you, relinquishing any claim. It's not yours. Get out." I screamed, the sound raw and torn from my throat. He sighed as if I were a tiresome child. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way. But you'll get nothing, Alara. You never did have much of a spine. Come on, Serena." He turned and they walked away, her laughter echoing down the stairwell. I slumped against my door, sliding to the floor, my whole body shaking with sobs of pure, undiluted hatred. The next few days were a blur of panic and desperation. I contacted lawyers, but without funds I had no options. The house was his. The money would be his. He had won. He had taken everything. My love, my years, my health, my security, and now he was back to take the last remnant of the life he'd destroyed. I went to the old row house on Willow Creek Lane one last time. I needed to say goodbye to Arthur and Beatrice, to the ghosts. I stood in the dusty living room, tears streaming down my face. I heard the door creak open behind me. I turned, expecting a developer. It was Kalen and Serena. "Figured we'd find you here," Kalen said, his voice cold. "Getting sentimental over what's mine?" "Get out, Kalen," I said, my voice trembling. "Haven't you taken enough?" "Not quite," Serena purred, looking around the dusty room with distaste. "We need to make sure you understand the situation. You sign the papers. You walk away. You never bother us again." "Or what?" I challenged, the last of my courage flaring. Kalen took a step toward me. Then another. His expression was no longer casual. It was deadly serious. "Or we make sure you can't bother anyone ever again." I backed away, but the room was small. Serena moved to block the door to the kitchen. I was trapped. "You ruined my life," I whispered, the truth of it crushing me. "You ruined it yourself by being so trusting," he sneered. Now it's time to tidy up the last loose end. He lunged at me. I screamed and tried to dodge, but Serena grabbed my arms from behind, her strength surprising. We struggled, a chaotic, silent dance of desperation in the dusty gloom. I kicked and fought, but there were two of them and I was weak from a decade of hardship. We crashed against the patio door, the old latch giving way. We stumbled out onto the small, rickety balcony overlooking the overgrown backyard. "Goodbye, Alara," Kalen grunted, his face a mask of ruthless determination. With a final, brutal shove from both of them, I was propelled backward over the railing. The world upended. The sky and the ground swapped places. There was a terrifying moment of weightless flight, and then an impact that was not so much a sound as a feeling. A sickening, crushing finality that exploded through every bone in my body. I lay broken on the cold ground, looking up at the balcony where they stood, silhouetted against the setting sun. They looked down at me for a brief second, two figures holding hands. Then they turned and walked away. The pain was unimaginable, a white-hot fire consuming me. But worse than the pain was the despair. The utter, complete injustice of it. He had won. He would get the money. He would live his carefree life with Serena. And I would die alone in the dirt, a forgotten footnote in his story. My last thought as the darkness swallowed me was a silent, screaming plea to a God I had long stopped believing in. "Please, let me do it over. Let me make it right." The darkness was not silent. It was filled with a low, rhythmic beeping and the distant, muffled sounds of life. My eyelids were leaden, but I forced them open. Blurry white. A ceiling. The smell was clean. Antiseptic. Not dirt and decay. Panic, sharp and immediate, seized me. The hospital. They'd found me. I'd survived the fall. Caleb would be back. He'd finished the job. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, sluggish, yet whole. There was no shattering pain. My arms moved. My legs moved. I pushed myself up on my elbows, blinking against the light. This wasn't a hospital room. It was our bedroom. Our bedroom. The one in the little house we'd shared. The morning sun was streaming through the familiar gauzy curtains I'd bought on sale. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed. 7:03 a.m. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a dream. A cruel, detailed dream born of a dying brain. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth. The knuckles weren't swollen from years of scrubbing floors. The skin wasn't chapped and raw. I touched my face. The lines of worry and exhaustion were gone. My hair fell over my shoulders, thick and dark, not the thin graying mane I'd become accustomed to. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the full-length mirror on the closet door. I stared at the reflection. It was me. But the me from 12 years ago. The me from before the divorce. The me from the night of the anniversary dinner. A sound from the kitchen made me jump. The clatter of a coffee mug. A familiar, off-key humming. No, it's not possible. I crept to the bedroom door and pulled it open a crack. Kalen was standing at the stove, scrambling eggs. He was wearing the old, faded UCLA sweatshirt I loved. He looked young, rested, vibrant. The man on the balcony was a ghost. He turned and saw me, his face breaking into that easy, charming smile that had once made my heart skip. "Morning, sleepyhead. I was about to come wake you. Big day today." I could only stare, my hand gripping the doorframe to keep from falling over. He misread my silence. "Hey, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." He came over, his expression softening with concern. He reached out to touch my forehead and I flinched back so violently I nearly fell. His smile faltered. "Alara? What's wrong?" My mind was screaming, a chaotic jumble of memories. The fall, the pain, the decade of loneliness, his sneering face on the balcony. And now this perfect reenactment of a morning I barely remembered. My voice was a croak. I cleared my throat. I had a bad dream. The concern on his face melted into relief. He chuckled. "Yeah. Well, shake it off. The company just called. They've assigned me to that temporary overseas position in Zurich. It's really happening." The words were a precise, verbatim echo from another lifetime. A cold certainty settled over me, washing away the panic and confusion. This was not a dream. This was something else. Second chance. A miracle. Or a curse. He was still talking, his voice horribly familiar. "They require me to be single for the posting. You know how these big corporations are with their archaic rules. Let's find some time this week to go file for divorce. Just on paper, of course. It'll be a fake divorce. I turned my head and looked at the all-too-familiar face in front of me. The face of the man I had loved. The face of the man who had murdered me. The memories of my lost life. The betrayal, the poverty, the grief, the sheer physical agony of my death, crashed over me not as a memory but as a fresh, open wound. The love I had once felt for him curdled in an instant, replaced by a hatred so pure and so vast it was dizzying. Without a second thought I acted. I didn't think. I just felt. I drew my arm back and slapped him. Hard. The crack of my palm against his cheek was shockingly loud in the quiet kitchen. It echoed off the tiles, a sound of pure, undiluted justice. Kalen staggered back, his hand flying to his face, his eyes wide with utter shock and confusion. The charming facade shattered, replaced by raw, unvarnished astonishment. "What the hell, Ilara?" he finally sputtered, his voice rising in anger. "Are you crazy?" I stared at his ugly, bewildered face, my eyes burning with a fire he had never seen in me. "I'd have to be crazy to believe you," I said, my voice low and steady, laced with a venom that made him blink. "I'd have to be insane to ever trust a single word that comes out of your mouth again. He wasted half of my life. He let his parents die alone. He left me to rot in poverty. And then he murdered me." Just thinking about the feeling of my bones breaking, my body smashing into pulp from that fall, sent a cold shiver of remembered agony through my whole body. Seeing me silent, my rage a palpable force in the room, Kalen's eyes flickered with a panic I now recognized. The panic of a man whose perfect plan was suddenly veering off script. But he was a good actor. He quickly tried to cover it up, forcing a smile that looked worse than crying. "Honey," he began, his voice placating. "I know you're upset. This is sudden. But I'm doing this for my promotion. For us. It's all so I can give you a better life. You understand that, right?" He took a step toward me, holding his hands out in a gesture of false affection. "It's just a fake divorce. The second the job ends we'll get remarried, I promise. If you're not comfortable I can have my parents come stay with you. I'll send you a living allowance every month too. You can rest easy, right?" The script was exactly the same. Word for word. The same promises, the same reassurances that had once sounded so loving and now sounded like a sinister recitation. In my last life this had worked. This had broken down my defenses. Now it only fueled the inferno inside me. I took a deep breath, forcing the tremble from my hands. Heaven had given me this second chance not for impulsive revenge, but for a calculated victory. I needed to be smart. I needed to play the long game. I needed to send him straight to hell, and I needed to do it legally. I forced my features to soften. I let my shoulders slump, feigning resignation. I looked down at the floor as if defeated. "You promise?" I whispered, making my voice small and shaky. "You promise it's just on paper? You'll come back for me?" The relief on his face was instantaneous. The panic vanished, replaced by smug triumph. He'd won. I was back under control. "Of course I promise, my love," he said, pulling me into a hug I had to endure, my body rigid with revulsion. "This kind of thing should be done quickly. I've got a friend at the civil office. We'll file first thing tomorrow morning." He even pulled the divorce agreement out of his briefcase, right there and then. In my previous life I had signed it blindly, so trusting, not even noticing the traps hidden in the dense legalese. Now, as he handed me the pen with a triumphant smile, I held the papers and pretended to read them. Then I let out a cold laugh and pointed straight at the asset division clause. "Kalen, care to explain this part?" "What part?" he asked, his smile tightening. "If this is just a fake divorce," I said, my voice dripping with false confusion, "why does it say I walk away with nothing? Why does it say I relinquish all claim to our joint assets? Our savings? The house?" He didn't even flinch. He replied with full, arrogant confidence. "I'm going abroad. Zurich is insanely expensive. I'll need access to all the cash. You're just a librarian. You wouldn't understand international finance. Stop stalling and sign the damn thing. Just a librarian." The condescension was breathtaking. I threw the pen to the floor. "No. No way in hell. If I sign this, what's to stop you from walking away for real? What if once the divorce is finalized you turn your back on me?" I gave him a cold, knowing smile. "You're not seeing someone else, are you? Trying to use this fake divorce as a way to get rid of me?" Kalen's face changed instantly. The color drained from his cheeks, then flooded back in an angry red flush. What the hell are you talking about, Alara? Don't project your dirty thoughts onto me. Don't you dare slander me like that. I couldn't be bothered to watch his act anymore. I scoffed. Fine. We can fake the divorce. But you leave with nothing. Keep the house. I keep the savings. You can have your freedom. No way. He cut me off before I'd even finished, the vehemence in his voice betraying his real priorities. After all, he was planning to run off abroad and live the good life with Serena. Without money, how the hell was he going to do that? Realizing he'd come off too eager, too angry, he softened his tone. It was a visible effort. Hey. How about this, babe? I know you're nervous. I'll leave this apartment to you and I'll take the cash. Is that fair? I pretended to consider it, to sigh and give in. The apartment was a small, modest place. The cash in our savings was about $30,000. A fortune to me then, but a pittance to him for his new life. He clearly thought he was getting the better deal. Fine, I said, injecting a tone of weary defeat into my voice. It's just a fake divorce anyway. I picked up the pen, and as I bent over to sign the amended agreement, I couldn't stop the smile from curling up at the corners of my mouth. What Kalen didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that this very apartment building was also slated for demolition in a few years. The payout would be even larger than the one for his parents' row house. In my previous life, the apartment had been under his name. I'd been evicted and seen none of it. Not this time. I signed my name. Alara Vance. For the last time again. But this time I was holding the pen. The pen felt heavy in my hand, an instrument of both liberation and condemnation. I signed my name with a steady hand, the loops and lines a stark contrast to the trembling scrawl of my first life. This signature wasn't an act of trust. It was the first move in a game of chess, and I finally knew all of Kalen's plays before he made them. He beamed, a picture of relieved triumph, and snatched the paper away as if afraid I'd change my mind. Perfect. It's all going to be perfect, you'll see. He leaned in to kiss my cheek and I turned my head slightly so his lips grazed my hair instead. He didn't seem to notice, too absorbed in his victory. That night I lay in our bed, my back to him, feigning sleep. My body was rigid, every cell screaming with the memory of his betrayal. I heard the rustle of sheets, his breathing slow and even. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he whispered my name. Alara? You asleep? I didn't respond, keeping my breathing deep and rhythmic. He gave me a little nudge. When I remained still, he slipped out of bed with the practiced silence of a man who had already been living a secret life. I heard the soft click of the bedroom door, then the more distant click of the bathroom door closing. I was out of bed in an instant, pressing my ear to the cool wood of the bedroom door. The low murmur of his voice was just audible. Don't worry, baby. I already got her to sign the agreement. We're finalizing it tomorrow. A giggle, sharp and familiar, came through the phone. Serena's giggle. Wow, you're that eager. Just one more month, he whispered, his voice dripping with an intimacy that made my skin crawl. Once we get the divorce certificate, we'll disappear. I'll fake my death, go off the grid. Guaranteed that old hag won't find us. Old hag. The term lanced through me. That old couple, he continued, his voice cold and dismissive. I'll toss them aside too. In a few years, when they both croak and the kid's grown up, we'll come back and live the good life. I stood there, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug half-moons into my palms. The kid. The boy he'd brought home in our second year of marriage, claiming he was an orphan from a program his company sponsored. A sweet, quiet child with Kalen's eyes, who I had loved as my own. It wasn't until my dying moment in my first life that I learned the truth. Dylan wasn't adopted. He was the biological son of Kalen and Serena, a secret they'd hidden until they were ready to discard me and claim him. I had given everything, my youth, my health, my love, to raising another woman's child, only to be murdered by his parents. The fury was a living thing in my chest, threatening to choke me. I heard the bathroom door open and rushed back to bed, sliding under the covers just as he crept back into the room. He got into bed beside me, clearly in a good mood, even humming softly to himself. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, dying to turn over and tear that smug face apart. But I forced myself to take a deep, silent breath. Don't be rash. Don't ruin it. Heaven gave you the second chance to send them straight to hell. The next morning, Kalen couldn't wait to drag me to the civil office. He was all smiles, so much so that the clerk who processed our paperwork looked between us with profound confusion. Her gaze settled on me, full of silent sympathy for the seemingly heartbroken wife being so callously discarded. But when she noticed the small, unshakable smile on my own face, her pity turned to pure bewilderment. As we left, clutching our divorce certificates, I overheard her whisper to a colleague, "That's the happiest divorcing couple I've ever seen." Over the next month, Kalen used overtime at work as an excuse to stay out all night. When he did come home, he reeked of cheap perfume, Serena's scent from before Kalen's money had upgraded her wardrobe. I pretended not to notice. I played the part of the trusting, dutiful, soon-to-be-abandoned wife perfectly. Even when his parents, Arthur and Beatrice, saw what was going on and tried to speak up on my behalf, I simply smiled gently. "Mom, Dad, he's working hard. It's only natural that he has to socialize. As his wife, I should be understanding." My composure only deepened their affection for me and their frustration with their son. I was weaving a web, and every thread of my patience was another strand of steel. One afternoon, Dylan, now a thoughtful 6-year-old, looked up from his coloring book. "Mom, the other day I saw Dad with a different lady. Doesn't he love us anymore?" My feelings about the boy were complicated. He wasn't ungrateful. In my last life after my death, he'd had a complete breakdown. He'd investigated the truth, cried hysterically at my grave, but under the constant brainwashing and emotional manipulation from Kalen and Serena, he had sunk into a depression and eventually taken his own life. He may not have been my biological child, but the bond we'd shared over more than a decade was real. He was a victim in this too. I pulled him gently into my arms. "It's okay. Even if Daddy isn't around, you still have me." I looked at him, my voice firm but kind. "And remember, you've done nothing wrong. I believe that with the right guidance, you'll grow up to understand what's right and what's wrong." The day we officially received our divorce certificates, Kalen finally bothered to come home for a performance. Facing complaints from his parents, he put on a face full of guilt. "I'm sorry, Mom, Dad. The company just assigned me to a last-minute business trip. I have to go abroad for a while." He turned to me, oozing false gratitude. "Thanks for taking this on, Alara. When I come back, I promise I'll make it up to you." I pretended to be moved and nodded, but the moment he stepped out the door, I slammed it shut behind him with a bang that shook the frame. The sound was immensely satisfying. I immediately began checking the house. As I expected, Kalen had been thorough. He'd taken all the bank books, the credit cards, even the gold jewelry that had been mine, gifts from his parents, my grandmother's locket. He'd cleaned it all out. I was furious, the old, helpless rage from my first life bubbling up. I nearly grabbed the phone to curse him out. But I stopped myself. Besides this apartment, I also had a small condo I had saved up for and bought before our marriage. In my first life, Kalen had sweet-talked and coerced me into transferring it into his name, another asset for him and Serena to loot. Not this time. No matter how he tried to manipulate me over the phone in the coming weeks, I only reluctantly agreed to hand over my remaining dowry money. The condo stayed firmly, legally in my name. After what I'd been through, I had learned one hard truth. A woman must always leave herself a way out. Pitying a man would only bring a lifetime of misfortune. Just like before, once Kalen left, he completely cut contact. According to the timeline from my previous life, 3 days later, Arthur would be pushed by some rowdy kids while exercising, resulting in a cerebral hemorrhage. The shock would cause Beatrice to suffer a stroke. This time I was ready. I did everything I could to prevent it. I went with Arthur on his walks. I warned him about the group of teenagers who frequented the park. But fate, it seemed, had a stubborn streak. On the 3rd day, while I was at the grocery store, my phone rang. It was a neighbor. Arthur had slipped on a patch of ice and fallen hard. He'd lost consciousness. I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I stayed completely calm. I called for an ambulance first, then called Beatrice, my voice steady and reassuring. "Mom, Dad's had a fall. I've called an ambulance. I need you to stay calm for me. Can you do that? I'll meet you at the hospital." Thankfully, this time with my support, Beatrice didn't suffer a stroke, though her emotions were frayed beyond measure. At the hospital, she trembled as she dialed Kalen's number. Just like before, the line was disconnected. She called his company, only to be told he had resigned weeks ago. Seeing the moment was right, I let my own carefully constructed composure break. I dissolved into tears, a masterclass of performance. "Mom," I sobbed, "I think Kaylin tricked me." I told her everything about the fake divorce, the empty promises. "He even took my dowry money and all the gold jewelry you and Dad bought for me. Do you think he's seeing someone else? There's no money left at home and now Dad's in the hospital. I really don't know what to do." My mother-in-law was furious. "That heartless bastard," she cursed. Then her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Compared to the devastating stroke she'd suffered in my past life, this was a manageable outcome. I sold my condo. The money was more than enough to cover Arthur's surgery and hospital bills without the desperate delays that had cost him his life before. The operation was a success. When he finally opened his eyes after surgery, I ducked into the bathroom and used several drops of eye drops to redden my eyes, then came out pretending to be overjoyed. "Mom, you're awake. Don't worry, I've already paid the hospital and surgery fees. The doctor said Dad's surgery went really well. He's going to be okay." Tears welled up in her eyes. The first thing she asked about was the money. I lowered my head, putting on a sorrowful face. "I sold my parents' old house for cheap. It'll hold us over for a while, I hope." Her expression changed instantly. She knew I'd lost my parents when I was young, and that old house was all I had left of them. And now, to save her husband, I had sold it. "Ilara," her voice broke with emotion. She gripped my hand tightly and sobbed. "My dear, dear girl." I felt a deep ache in my chest. My in-laws were good people. It was a tragedy that in my previous life, they had died in pain without a proper funeral because of their son's treachery. This time I would not let that happen. After Arthur was stable, the two of them talked privately. Beatrice called me into the room and quietly placed a bank card in my hand. "Ilara, it's that bastard who wronged you. We take part of the blame too for failing to raise him right." Her eyes were full of guilt and resolve. "This is our retirement fund. There's around 300,000 in it. Please take it." Before I could refuse, she shoved the card into my hand and gripped it tightly. "Ilara, if you don't mind having us two old folks around, then from today on, we'll pretend we never had that heartless son. You are our real daughter." In that moment, a wave of fierce determination surged inside me. I had them. Their trust, their loyalty was now mine. Kaylin had severed his ties, and I had woven myself into the fabric of his family. "Kaylin Vance, I thought since you like faking your death so much, this time I'll make it real for you. Permanently." 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. The frantic, desperate energy of my first months in this new timeline settled into a purposeful, peaceful rhythm. With Arthur and Beatrice's unwavering support and love, our unusual family unit didn't just survive. It thrived. Dylan grew up healthy in both mind and body, a sharp, kind boy who consistently ranked at the top of his class. The shadow of his biological parents seemed a distant nightmare. Arthur made a full recovery, spending his days playing chess in the park and fishing by the lake, a contentment etched on his face that had been absent before. Beatrice took over the household with a ferocious love, refusing to let me lift a finger after my long work days. "Your father and I may be old," she'd say, "but we're still useful. We can't let ourselves become a burden to our precious daughter." Arthur, using his network of old friends and colleagues, even helped me find a new job, a quiet, well-paying position as an archivist at the university library. It was light duties, a high salary, and it gave me peace. The four of us lived a peaceful, happy life. We had a silent, unspoken agreement never to mention Kaylin again. It was as if he had truly vanished. But I never let my guard down. I knew the timeline. According to my past life, it wouldn't be long before the government announced the next round of demolitions. And just 1 week after that announcement, Kaylin would come rushing back with Serena. I was ready. The notice came just as I knew it would. Both my in-laws' old row house and the apartment building I now owned were slated for demolition. The compensation would be life-changing. A week later, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen with Beatrice, teaching Dylan how to make her famous apple pie. Arthur was reading in the living room. We'd moved into a comfortable house I'd bought with the first year's salary from my new job, a place with no memories of Kaylin. I opened the door. And there he was. Kaylin. But the years had not been kind to him. He looked hardened, thinner, his expensive clothes replaced with a cheap, worn jacket. His eyes darted around, hungry and calculating. Serena stood behind him, her once polished appearance now faded and sharp-edged, like a tacky ornament left out in the sun. The moment he saw me, his eyes bulged with a possessive rage. You cheating whore. Living it up with another man while I'm gone? He took a threatening step forward. Before he could get anywhere near me, Arthur was there, moving with a speed I didn't know he still possessed. He grabbed his walking cane from nearby and slammed it across Kalen's legs with a crack, knocking him straight to the floor. Kalen stared up, stunned. Dad? Why are you hitting me? I'm your son. But Arthur didn't hold back. He raised the cane again and struck him hard across the mouth. Bastard. My son is long dead. Kalen screamed, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Beatrice rushed over, not to help him but to stand by Arthur. Mom. Say something. Can't you see he's hitting me? Has he lost his damn mind? Kalen pleaded. Before he could finish, Beatrice slapped him across the face. What kind of lunatic are you? She swung again, harder. My son's dead and he can't even rest in peace, and you dare insult my daughter? I'll beat you to death myself. I stood to the side, arms crossed, watching the beautiful, brutal spectacle. My boyfriend, Mark, a gentle history professor I'd been seeing for a year, blinked in confusion. Shouldn't we help? Nope, I replied, a small smile on my lips. This is the first time I've ever seen such a perfect tag team beatdown. I'm not interrupting that. Kalen, dazed and beaten, finally fled, clutching his head. Just before he left, he snarled one last threat. Without me, who's going to take care of you two old farts in your dying years? Arthur hurled the cane at his retreating back. Get lost. I don't need a son like you. Beatrice spat on the ground in disgust. We'd rather hire a random farmhand to take care of us than rely on a scumbag like you. We knew he wouldn't give up. That very night, he and Serena moved into my in-laws' old countryside house, thinking the village neighbors would protect them from a scene. He was right about his parents not making a fuss there. But he was wrong about me. I brought Mark and called a few friends from the gym, large, muscular guys who asked no questions and were happy to help. We headed straight for the old house. The moment I opened the door, Serena's face contorted with rage. You bitch. This is your doing, isn't it? She charged forward, but I slapped her across the face without hesitation. Serena, I said coldly. If you've got issues, go see a therapist. This is my parents' house. I have every right to be here. You're the one trespassing. I glanced at Kalen, a smirk on my face. Want to see what happens if I call the cops? She was stunned. What are you talking about? Isn't this Kalen's house? Originally, I couldn't care less about you two sewer rats, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. But this house belongs to my parents. That gives me every right to handle it. I suggest you leave unless you want me to get physical. She lunged again. I didn't hesitate. I delivered 2 more sharp, hard slaps. Have you come to your senses yet? If not, I don't mind helping you a little more. I gave them 24 hours to leave. As I turned to go, a drunk, stumbling Kalen arrived. He rushed at me, but one of the gym guys kicked him square in the chest, sending him flying. You think someone like you can lay a hand on Alara? Try it again and I'll snap your damn wrist. Kalen, desperate, brushed his greasy hair back. It's me, Alara. Your husband. I slowly stepped forward, smiling faintly. Then I slapped him hard. And who the hell do you think you are? My husband, Kalen Vance, is already dead. He started frantically recalling old memories, trying to appeal to a sentiment that had died in me long ago. I kept insisting he was an imposter. Finally I said, fine. If you're really him, let's go to the police station. Let's see if they recognize you. His face turned ashen. He couldn't face the police. The massive high-interest loans he'd taken out to fund his life with Serena would land him in prison. He fell to his knees, begging, apologizing, even slamming his forehead on the ground. Please, Alara. I have nothing left. It was all Serena's fault. She seduced me. I love you. I ignored him. When he grabbed my sleeve and cried, think about our child. Do you really want him to grow up without a father? My gym friends didn't need a signal. They slammed him to the ground, pummeling him mercilessly. You piece of shit. Faking your death? You think you're qualified to be a father? One shouted. I kicked him twice myself. So tell me, who the hell are you really? Under the storm of blows he finally broke. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm not Kalen. I swear I'm not. Please stop. I waved them off. I bent down, looking at the pathetic, broken figure. I'll raise my child on my own. That has nothing to do with you. You're just an outsider now. Come near us again and I won't be so polite next time. I knew he wouldn't give up. He had one card left to play. Dylan. Sure enough, he began stalking the elementary school. My mother-in-law spotted him. Should we call the police? She asked, surprisingly calm. I shook my head. A thief has 1,000 days to scheme, but we can't spend 1,000 days guarding against him. I crouched down to meet Dylan at eye level. Dylan, will you help Mommy with something? Kaylin finally cornered Dylan in a narrow alley on a day he walked home alone. Dylan, do you still recognize me? You kind of look like my dad, Dylan said, perfectly following the script we'd rehearsed. Kaylin's eyes lit up. It's me. I'm your dad. Come on, let's go home. I'll take you to see your real mom. Dylan blinked. Okay. Kaylin brought him straight to their rented house. Serena burst into tears. Hi, sweet boy. Mommy missed you so much. I missed you too, Mommy, Dylan said, his voice small and pouty. That old witch at home keeps making me study every day. She never lets me eat anything good. I hate her. I heard every word through the audio device hidden in Dylan's pocket. My blood ran cold. Then came the clincher. Dylan, Serena asked sweetly, would you be willing to help Mommy with something? She pulled a small paper packet from her pocket. When you get home, pour this into the old witch's cup. And remember, put some in your grandparents' cups too. I got it, Dylan said. The packet contained a lethal dose of hydrogen chloride. They were using a child to try to murder us. That night we staged our scene. I slumped over the dinner table. Arthur and Beatrice lay motionless on the floor. Dylan made the panicked call. Daddy, Grandpa and Grandma. They passed out. I can't wake them up. Did you pour the powder? Kaylin demanded. Dylan just cried. An hour later, Kaylin and Serena crept into the apartment. They saw our bodies. You two old farts, Kaylin cursed, staring at his parents. Serves you right. Serena's eyes scanned the room with greed. She spotted the powder packet on the table. Making sure, she snapped and pried my mouth open, pouring the entire contents in. They were cooing over their victory when the police stormed in, dragging them away. Later, in the interrogation room, Kaylin begged to see me. Elara, don't be heartless. It was just a fake divorce. How could you take things this far? I let out a cold laugh. You know exactly who crossed the line first. You lied. You cheated. You abandoned your dying parents. A man as heartless as you has no right to lecture me. He stared stunned. You knew. His face twisted with rage. He slammed against the glass. You did this on purpose. You tried to ruin me. Then he let out a maniacal laugh. You think you've won? Dylan is my son. Mine and Serena's. One day he'll hate you and come looking for me. I raised my hand. Dylan came running over. Thanks to this little guy, I said, patting his head, we caught you two monsters. Dylan beamed. Mom, wasn't my acting amazing? Kaylin's eyes widened in burning disbelief. You, Dylan, I'm your father. My mom's not a witch, Dylan said with a calm maturity far beyond his years. She raised me. He's my real mom. As for you, I don't have a dad. As I led Dylan away, I heard Kaylin's screams echoing behind us. He was sentenced to 15 years. Serena to 18. But they never made it to prison. Right after sentencing, Kaylin lunged at her in the hallway, sinking his teeth into her throat. Officers shot him dead on the spot. When I heard the news, I felt nothing. The chapter was finally, definitively closed. Mommy, I want to eat KFC, Dylan said sweetly later that day. Mark chuckled beside us. It's KFC, buddy. I smiled, looking at my son and the kind man beside me. This time I had truly rewritten my fate. The weight of the past was gone. Ahead of me was a beautiful, peaceful future, built not on lies, but on the ruins of a life I had fiercely reclaimed. The end.